Okay, good evening, everybody. I am in the process of apparently losing my voice, or Hashem. So hopefully, it says interesting. I've never actually ever seen a source for this ever in my life, but I've heard it. I heard it many times when I was growing up. Could be a Baba Mice, I don't know, but that you're allotted X amount of words in your lifetime. That's all you can use. But the words of Torah don't count towards that number. I don't know. So I figure if I'm losing my voice, it might as well be on Torah instead of on Shtuyot, which there's plenty of that. Don't worry about it. Today, my oldest granddaughter, is going to be starting next year at Stei Chemed, Ezrat Hashem, and they have 6 weeks in a row. They have like a preparation thing, so it's from 4 to 5 on Tuesdays. So I drop her off and I pick her up afterwards. I decided, I'm just going to stay. So I took my Gemara with me, and I'm sitting there learning. And that lasted about 12 minutes. And then the rest of the time is Netflix. So for those of you who think I don't waste time, I'm good at it. Anyways, so that's the disclaimer. We're in the middle of Parak Ted Vav. It's a short parak. We might even finish it tonight, possibly. But the main thesis until now, this parak has been as follows: that we made a distinction between an Eved Hashem and Oved Hashem. An Eved Hashem is a noun. It is a fact. It's like saying a king, a president, a prime minister. It's not describing what the person is doing. It's describing the essence. It's describing the person. So an Eved Hashem is one thing, and that is the tzaddik. The tzaddik who already has been able to quash all of the Yetzer Hara, the left side of the heart, metaphorically, is empty of any nefesh habahamit. And we also said that, of course, there's still plenty of work that tzaddik can do. There's always growth. And we talk about the Oved Hashem. Oved Hashem is below the level of tzaddik. It's a person who serves. It's a verb. He's serving, or she is serving Hashem. And there's a process of growth also. And where we left off was the idea that within the category of Benoni, you can actually have somebody who is not an Oved Hashem, which makes, on the surface, absolutely no sense. Okay? Because if you remember, we talked about the Gemara. The Gemara said, they quoted a pasuk, that we make a distinction between a tzaddik and a rasha, and an Oved Elokim Shalo Avado, one who serves God and one who doesn't serve him. So the first thing we talked about was the difference between Oved and Eved. Again, Oved is the essence, that's who person is, and Eved is the person who is in the process of serving Hashem. And then we have to say that there also is that the label Eved Hashem and Lo Avado applies to the world of the Benoni as well. But how? So I'm going to do is I'm going to put on the screen the continuation of the text, and then we'll look at a little bit tonight, not too much, but some of the words of Rav Steinsaltz. Why does that move out of my way? There we go. Okay, let me make it even a little bigger. Come on. There we go. Okay. Uva Benoni. When it comes to the Benoni, yesh gam ken shtei madregot. There are also two levels of the Benoni. There is the Oved Elokim, the one who serves Hashem, Vasher lo avado. This is the words of the pasuk, and a Benoni who does not serve Hashem. At least that's what it sounds like we're saying. When again, seems to be a contradiction, because we say that a Benoni is someone who doesn't sin, is a person who hasn't sinned. Again, means he's done tshuva. That they're working on getting, there's a struggle all the time against the Yetzer Hara. How can you say he's not serving Hashem? We're going to talk about that now. And even though he may be a Benoni, but he's not considered at the moment an Oved Hashem, or an Eved Hashem rather. Eino Rasha. He's still not the category of Rasha. So it makes it even stranger now. If you say a person doesn't serve Hashem, he's not a Rasha, how can he be a Benoni if he's not a serving Hashem? First of all, let's explain. He continues to re-explain, starting right here where it says ki. This is like giving the definition of the Benoni. First of all, he's not a Rasha because He's not ever done an Aveira, even the lightest Aveira. And again, if you remember, we talked about it a few chapters ago. Doesn't mean he never sinned, but it means he's gotten to the point where he's done Aveira, so he's done Tshuva for it already. So it's Kilu doesn't exist. Vigam, in addition to not doing an Aveira, Kiyem kol mitzvot shef shalo. Any mitzvah he's able to do, he did. Lekaiman, to do them and to do the mitzvah properly. The Talmud Torah keneged kulam, and the Talmud Torah is equal to all of them. This is another topic we've talked about already. V'lo pasak pume migirsa. He never stops talking in Torah. Wait a minute. So he's even further. He's even seems to make this more of a quagmire, more of an unintelligible statement. He tells us that there is a concept of a Benoni who is not an Eved Hashem. Then he reminds us parenthetically, by the way, the Benoni is the guy who doesn't do this, who doesn't do this. He's got a clean slate. He always talks in Torah. So how is it possible he can be an Eved? He can't be an Eved Hashem and a Benoni, or I should say the opposite. How can he be a Benoni but not be considered an Eved Hashem? Listen to this. Ella, I'm going to read a bunch of lines here. She'eno oseh shum milchama ima yetzer v'natzcho. He does not need to do any battle with his Yetzer Hara to win. Al yedei or Hashem hameir al nefesh elokit shebemoach hashalit halalev kanal. First, he makes a general statement. This Benoni, who he is now going to categorize as a not Eved Hashem, doesn't put up any battle with his Yetzer Hara by use of the Or Hashem, the light of God, which is infused and rules over the heart, as mentioned earlier. Why? What do you mean? What do you mean he doesn't put up a battle? Didn't we say that that's the definition of a Benoni? So here's his definition for this very small window of an individual. His Yetzer Hara doesn't entice him at all. It's not that he is like the tzaddik, where he has removed the Yetzer Hara and the Nefesh HaBahamit, but rather the Yetzer Hara is there. It just doesn't do anything to him. Let's read that again. Because the Yetzer Hara doesn't have any battle with this guy to stop him from Torah or serving God. And the Yetzer Hara doesn't have to fight with him at all. Why? What kind of person is this? Kigon, for example, he is innately always learning Torah. It's not that he has to force himself to sit down. I got to go to the shir, or that's right, I forgot I have to do my daf yomi. Or so. It's a person who's always learning. It's natural to him. He he's also not enticed by the beauty of women. He has no desire, not because he's gay, because he's just what we would call adish. He's cold. Even in the other pleasures of this world. Let me move this. I just have to move this up a little bit now. There, I'm over here now. Right down to the bottom. He doesn't enjoy life. He doesn't enjoy any pleasures of the world. Therefore, what? So how does this help me? Let's go up here. Lachen, and therefore, ein tzarich leitbonen kol kach b'gdulat Hashem v'holid mebinato ruach dat yirat Hashem b'mocho. He doesn't have to work at all to try to awaken the love of God and to get himself going, using his intellect that's in his brain to protect himself. Shalom la'avora mitzvot lo ta'aseh. He doesn't need to do anything. It's just on autopilot. V'ahavat Hashem b'libo l'davka bo b'kiyum mitzvot. He doesn't need to engage the avat Hashem, the love of God that's in his heart, in order to cling to God to do his mitzvot. The Talmud Torah keneged kulam. Ella, but rather. So what's this connection? Let me finish this whole paragraph and we'll see. It's enough that he has this inner hidden love for Hashem. Again, we're going to review all this in a minute. That's sufficient. Shenikru Oved Hashemo. V'lachein eino nikra Oved Klal. He's therefore not called an Oved Hashem at all. Why? He ahava zo hamesuteret, because this hidden love for God, eina pu'ulato v'avodato klal, because that love that a person, that every single Jew has, that's in him, he doesn't need to do anything to awaken that love whatsoever. It's there. Elohi Yerushatenu me'avotenu v'chlal Yisrael k'mo shekatavti l'kaman. It's the love that is a part of our Yerusha. It's part of our DNA as Jews, as I mentioned before. Okay, what's going on? Let's kind of summarize before we take a look at what Steinsaltz has to tell us. A person who sits and learns all the time, and it's not, they have no struggle. They just sit and they learn. And they're also not enticed by beautiful women. They're not enticed by, oh, I should go out and get myself Starbucks, because they're just cold people. They don't have this hergesh, this feeling. They don't have desires. They're on autopilot their whole life. They're doing mitzvot. They're keeping Torah. They're learning Torah. But it's all based on what? They don't have to awaken the love at all. There's no avodah. What's the word Eved Hashem mean? It means to serve, to work at something. La avod. There's no avodah. And they don't even try to awaken the love of Hashem because they don't even need it. All they're working on is working on fumes. What are those fumes? The hava mesuteret, this hidden, innate love that every Jew has for Hashem. To be an Eved Hashem doesn't just mean, therefore, you go through the motions. You learn, you give tzedakah, you do acts of chesed. That's important. But the heart needs to be in there. You need to be doing it to awaken the love of Hashem. And just skating by on the hava mesuteret is not sufficient. And therefore, that Beinoni is not an Oved Hashem. But let's take it a little step further. Let's understand what this hava mesuteret is. This hidden love is something that's not always on the forefront of our minds. And let's put it into context. When a person is sitting at work, and if you were to ask them, do you love your children? Hopefully, the immediate answer would be, of course, I love my children. Now, at the moment before they were asked, unless there's some reason, were they sitting there contemplating the love they have for their child? Probably not. 99% of the chance they were not sitting there contemplating the love they have for their child. However, when something happens, they see their child, they see a picture, they hear the child's name, they see the child, God forbid, is in danger. Instantly, of course, that love starts to well up more, and action is taken. But that love is always there, always, even though it may not be expressed. And even in cases, God forbid, where parents have distanced themselves from their children or vice versa, that love is always there. But at that moment, just before I asked you, do you love your children? You weren't doing any work on conjuring up the idea in your mind, the love you have for that child. But it's there. So therefore, let's go back now with what Zaken is saying is that you are a Benoni because you didn't do Averot. You are a Benoni because you're doing mitzvot and you're doing the best you possibly can. But there's something missing in the makeup of your Benoni-acity. I just made that word up. And that is that you're not struggling. Wait a minute, so that makes you a tzaddik? No, you're not struggling because you're adish. You don't have the feelings. You don't have the drive. You don't have something pushing you. And we're going to see how this is going to play out and relate back to the Gemara we talked about soon, that we talked about last week. But let's take a look first at what Rav Steinsaltz says about this. Here, it says Adam Kazeh. He's going to explain to us now, what type of person are we talking about? By the way, of course, this is the rare individual, I hope. Adam Kazeh, Shu intellectual, betiv'o, u'munyan b'dvarim ruchani. This person naturally is an intellectual and naturally is interested and involved interested in things that are spiritual. She'eno tzarich lilchom be'atzmo kedei lilmod. No one has to force him. He doesn't have to have any fight with himself to sit there and learn about things. Maybe he has a different fight with his Yetzer. The Mashal b'ta'avat nashim. Maybe. You have a person like this. Maybe he's not drawn to women at all because it's not his name. He's cold. This is continuing the quoting of the text. He's lacking the drives, lacking the feelings, natural feelings. Now he explains. Some people are more sensual, for the word senses, and who are less. Adam she'eno choshani, a person who is not in touch with their senses. Imeno nene mi'achila u'shtiya. If they don't have benefits or pleasure from eating and drinking, that's no sign that there's some great tzaddik. Someone sits there and eats. They say, look, I eat. I have the taste doesn't give me any pleasure. The drink doesn't give me any pleasure. Doesn't mean they're on some high giant level. Just means that they're cold in their senses to food and drink. It's those same, no different. He doesn't pay attention to what he's eating, just like he doesn't pay attention to what he sees. Adam kazeh, right here. Adam kazeh, this kind of a person, im ein lo pitui mini, if he has no drive, he's not driven anywhere sexually. This type of person doesn't mean, again, that he's some great tzaddik. It just means that he just is cold when it comes to that. Adam kazeh yoshev b'yeshiva, osek b'mitzvot al pi dako. This kind of a guy may sit in yeshiva and learn during his way. When it comes to the worldly things, whether he has something, doesn't, he doesn't care. He wears what he wears, he eats what he eats. He's not, burning up for anything specific in life. And also when he sits and learns, he's this kind of a person. Again, it's a very small window of people, hopefully. When they sit there learning, it's not because they have some great desire. That's not, Nitiyam is like an inclination. They don't have this great inclination for a high level of Kedusha, Ella, but rather, why are they learning? Yishum Teva Nafsho. It's just, it happens to be this person's nature. It doesn't look for anything else. Pakid, or professor, or rav, whether the guy was some kind of a pakid, a guy like sits behind a desk who, like, how do you say pakid in English even? You go to the post office, you go to wherever, the bank, guy sitting behind the counter to help you. Oh, a professor or a rabbi. It's the same personality of this guy. Benoni kazeh, this kind of benoni, matzui lichora b'tachlit hashlemut, v'lachem, kedei shelo yeh liot rasha. This kind of benoni, in order for him not to be a rasha, he doesn't have to work on his Yirat Hashem and doesn't have to try to fight against his and bring up this love so he doesn't do the wrong thing. Adam shein lo pituyei hayetzer, a person who doesn't have the seduction of the Yetzer Hara, he doesn't have to start bringing up and working on, oh, wait, I'm going to drive away that Yetzer Hara because I love Hashem. And remember, we said, I don't want to do anything to disconnect from God. He doesn't even have the Yetzer. The Yetzer Hara is there, just doesn't speak to him. The guy nor does he have to try to awaken that love for God. He doesn't have to do anything proactively to awaken a love in God to get him to sit and learn, because he's doing it, because that's the nature. Imagine for a moment a person who grew up in a home that all they saw all the time was Torah, and their genes are such from both sides of the family that they come from tremendously strong Torah families. That's all they know. And maybe that's their innate nature. And maybe they're, like I say, on autopilot. If you have, for example, maybe this is, I don't know if this is a good example or not because it's just now popping into my head, but I don't know if you know, but when you fly an airplane from about, I believe, less than 1 minute after takeoff till just about a minute before you land, the pilots do plenty. I want to just, cause and say that they don't. But the plane is on literally autopilot. It's flying by itself, all based on the computer of the plane. They take over, obviously, when there's necessary needed to take over for it, obviously. But in general, the plane is flying by itself. So let's say you're in a 12-hour flight. You're about 6 hours in, and the pilot is coming down the aisle just to say hello. They don't do that anymore. But let's say they do. And you see the pilot say, listen, Mr. Pilot, Miss Pilot, Mrs. Pilot, whatever. You're doing a great job flying this plane. Now, he'll probably or she'll probably say, thank you very much. But they're not flying the plane. By the way, if they were, they should be in the cockpit. They're not flying the plane. It's on autopilot. Whether they sit there and they just look out the window, or they sit there and they read a magazine, or they sit there with their hands on the controls, the plane is flying itself until there's a need for them to take over. But whether it's before landing or, God forbid, there's a problem in the air. So it's not like they're trying to focus and try to make sure the plane's on course and all the time. It's just when it's necessary at the beginning of the end. So a person like this, the Benoni, who doesn't have to put any effort, not just he doesn't put any effort, he has no battle with the Yetzer Hara. He's missing a key component of his Benoni-ness because he doesn't need to awaken the Ahava, the true love for Hashem. He doesn't need to fight the Yetzer Hara because he's just indifferent. That's the word, adish. I couldn't think of it in English. He's indifferent to what's going on. Okay, this person's walking by. I don't need to look at her. I'm learning Torah. Okay, if I'm not learning Torah, I'll do something. It's just this type of personality is not, it's not that it's bad, by the way. It's just he's still a Benoni, but he's not an Eved Hashem. Why? Oved, sorry, he's not an Oved. No, I was wrong, an Eved. He's not an Eved Hashem. He's not serving Hashem right now. See something here. See something on the next slide here. I have it a little bit on the hold on just 1 second. I have that. What is it? Hold on 1 second, please. I'm not going to do the slide. Just leave it here. Okay, let me leave this over here. Okay, let's go back now to the text. We'll come back to that slide. We're over here. It's the next paragraph. It says V'chein. V'chein af misheno matmid belimudo b'tiv'o. Yeah, but even a person who's not constantly learning because of his nature. This one, pay attention to. A person who isn't that their nature is that they should always be learning and they don't have this need to awaken love for Hashem, but rather a person who has gotten used to, has gotten into a routine of learning with Hatmada. He's really putting his kishkas into it. And this becomes second nature to them. For example, a person who learns Daf Yomi every day, a person who learns Halacha Yomi or Rambam Yomi, goes to a shir all the time at specific times. It becomes second nature. He's still, in a sense, and don't get worried, to clarify all this. This is still just Ahava Mesuteret. It's not yet Avado, that he's serving Hashem. Ela imkein rotze lilmod yoter meregiluto. Unless he always wants to try to learn more than he is used to. Now, let me pause here and explain this before we go on. hopefully, most people have some routine in some form of Torah, which means maybe they learn Parshat Shavua every day. Maybe they have a specific shiur they go to every day. Maybe they learn something specific every day. Once you are doing that on a habitual basis, and it becomes part of who you are, and you do exactly just that all the time, what happens? What happens then? Let me stop sharing for a second here. What happens then? You don't necessarily need to awaken yourself and say, okay, because I love Hashem and I'm going to serve Hashem, now I'm going to sit down and learn my Daf Yomi. I'm going to sit and learn my Torah. I'm going to learn whatever the Parsha is, Parshat Shavua is, because it's become second nature. I'll tell you personally, I know there's certain things I learn every single day. And when I do learn them every single day, if I miss it, I don't miss it. But if I push it over something, say, oh, I got to get back to it. It becomes second nature. Until I say, you know what? Usually I'm making this up now. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I don't usually sit down to learn. But I'm going to sit down today and learn Dafka today at 5 o'clock. I want to do a little bit more than I normally do. That's already growth. That's already the idea of the Ahava Mesuteret being no longer the only Ahavat Hashem you're working on, but the Ahavat Hashem is being awakened because you're going above and beyond, which should become second nature to you. Therefore, how does this now answer something we talked about last week? Let's take a look at the text and listen to this. This is amazing. Okay. Uveze yuvan ma shekatuv b'Gemara, and this is what we can now understand what it says in the Gemara we mentioned last week. Doved Elokim, the definition of someone who serves Hashem. Hainu, it means mi sheshoneh pirko mea pe'amim de'achad. It's a person who learns what they learn 101 times. And the velo avado, the person who doesn't serve Hashem, hainu mi sheshoneh pirko mea pe'amim levad. It's a person who only learns what he learns 100 times. What in the world does that mean? How can you tell me that a person learns something 100 times and then another one learns 101 times, that the 100 guy is lo avado? He doesn't serve Hashem. And the avado is the one who does it 101 times. Listen to this. V'hainu mishum, just a minute. V'hainu misha shoneh pirko mea pe'amim levad. A person, v'hainu mishum shabimehem haya regilut lishnot kol perek mea pamim. In those days, the time of the Gemara, believe it or not, it was normal. It was everyday life that what they learned in Mishnah, they learned it 100 times. Learn Halacha, learned it 100 times. שנזכרים ל10 פרסי בזוזה, ל11 פרסי בתרי זוזה, מפני שהוא יותר מרגילותם. He gave the Gemara an example that a person who wanted to rent a camel, and he wanted to go with that camel only 10 parsangs, it cost 1 zuz. They wanted to go 11 parsangs, just a little bit more. Now it costs 2, double. Why? Because now this animal is going to go farther than what it's used to. It's a mashal, it's a parable. What's going on? Let's really understand this. This is critical. Everything in this book is critical. As they say, like for those of you who read Animal Farm, they say everyone's equal, but some are a little bit more equal than others. Okay, so some of the lines in Tanya are a little more equal than others. What's happening? When a person would learn something 100 times, this is the time of the Talmud. That was natural. That was normal. Everyone did that. I say everyone did it. People learned. That's what they did. You learned it 100 times. But that was on autopilot after a while. I got to go over the Mishnah 100 times. Got to go over the Halacha 100 times. Got to whatever it might be. Do it 101. Now what have you done? You've gone beyond your hergel. You've gone beyond that which you are used to doing. Even that little tiny bit. Imagine saying Breshit bara Elokim et hashamayim et haaretz 100 times. Probably by the 30th time, you're going to your mind is wandering somewhere. And if you did that every single day, you say that one pasuk 100 times, and you have a counter on it, right? It's going to be just, it becomes just natural. Thank you. 101, that 101st time, he says, you're going beyond what your head of gale is. Once you go beyond that, which you're used to, then the ahava mesuteret, which is carrying you, is now pushed to the side, so to speak. And the ahava that you're trying to use to awaken from your mind, your heart, to connect with Hashem, that changes the whole dynamic. And that's why the Gemara says that there's a giant difference between someone who is considered serving Hashem by doing it 101 times. Because 100 times, it's not that it's not a mitzvah, but it's just, again, there's no effort as far as the love that you have to put into it. But to go even a drop above that, which was the natural way of doing it, that's a totally different story. Let's look at the rest of this text here, because he clarified what I just told you, he clarifies in the text. Let's go on. Oops. Oh, interesting. I don't have it on the screen. Okay. Hold on one second. I'm going to pause. Okay, let's share the screen. And here we go. Therefore, that 101st time, that he's doing it for the one time more that he's been used to since he's a kid. Shkula keneged kulam. Look at these words. Is equal importance, so to speak, to all the times he read those first 100. And it's an expression that it's the highest, it's higher than all, it's stronger than all. To be called an Oved Elokim. He's serving Hashem. Why? To change your habits, to change your nature, you have to awaken your love for Hashem. What made you to do that 101st time, which for you might mean the second time or a third time or adding something? We'll come back to that in a minute. You have to awaken the love for Hashem in order to awaken, as you contemplate the grandiosity of Hashem b'mocho in his mind, lishlot ala teva, to take control of your nature, shebechalal asmali amalei dam hanefesh habahamit, to use your ahavat Hashem to overcome the nature that you have in your left side of the heart of your nefesh habahamit, shami klipa, shami menahu hatera, v'zohi avodat tamal benoni. This is the true, complete love, action of the benoni, to work on taking that Yetzer Hara, the Nefesh HaBahamit, to the left side, and working using your mind to overcome your natural instinct to learn. What does that mean? But to add to what you're doing. Or wait, before I continue this last sentence. What's he saying and how does it apply to us? Tachlis, how do you apply this in your life? Let's go back to the person who learns something every day. Parenthetically, the Gemara tells us that after a person passes away, they ask 3 questions. And I'm sure you've heard this before. One of the 3 questions is, Kavata itim laTorah. Did you set aside specific times to learn Torah? It doesn't say, Lamad Torah. Did you learn Torah? It says, did you set aside did you set some specific times to learn Torah? So let's say the answer to that is yes. A person goes before God after 120 years. Yeah, God, listen, every single day from 7 a.m. to 7:45 a.m., I learned Daf Yomi. I learned Parshat Shavua. I learned Halacha Yomit. I learned the Rambam. I learned Mesilat Yeshar, whatever it might be. It's great. Yeshikoach, you were Kovea Iti B'Torah. Now says God, let me ask you another question. Is it something like you had to struggle with to do? Well, in the beginning, yeah, because in the beginning, it's like I'm changing my habit. I wasn't learning it, but then I became learning it. Okay, so after the 3rd year, was it a struggle? No, I became, it's who I am. Of course I do Daf Yomi. Of course I learn Parshat Shavua. Oh, okay, cool. So did you like have to, I don't know, really work at it to awaken your love? That's why you're sitting down to learn Torah. You have to think about the love of me to, well, honestly, no, not really. But did you have anything else to add to your story of Kabata 18? Oh yeah, you know what? As the time went on, I realized that when I decided that in addition to the Daf Yomi, I was going to learn Halacha Yomi every afternoon. Whoa. And was that hard to do? Well, it took me a long time to get used to it. Every time it was a struggle. Good. Excellent. Did you get used to that? Yeah, after a couple of years of that, I got used to that also. Did you do anything else? You see where I'm going with this, right? The idea being that we always need to be challenging ourselves to do a little bit more. It doesn't say you have to do something. I'm not telling you to learn Parshat Shavua 100 times. I'm not telling you to learn Daf Yomi 101 times. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is that everyone listening to me right now obviously has some form of Torah in their lives because at 7 o'clock on Tuesday nights, you have a shir. And some of you have a 7 o'clock on Sunday nights. And some of you have it on Wednesday mornings at 9 o'clock. And then other days, other week, without me, and other, or you take out your own chumash, you take out your own tehillim, whatever it might be. But if you're learning and never growing and adding something, then you're setting yourselves up to be on autopilot. It's a Benoni without the struggle during that moment. Are you learning Torah? Of course. You're getting into Sachar, you're reward fed 100%. But what about the love of Hashem? What about davening? Let's talk davening, because the same thing is true of tefillah. When we go through the davening, and we don't necessarily stop to think what it is we're saying, we don't necessarily stop in our Birkat Hamazon. We don't necessarily stop in our brachot, whatever it might be, any area of Torah, any area of halacha. If we get into that rut and we really aren't focusing or we're not growing, let's say, for example, someone, their tefillah is made up of just various parts, a smattering across of the davening, especially in the morning. They decide, you know what, I'm going to add something. I'm going to add tefillat chana. I'm going to add korbanot. I'm going to add whatever it might be. So that's great. In that vein, by the way, some of you may have already heard this, me mention this. My Navi class on Sunday night is going to be coming to an end. Well, not end, but we're going to finishing in Nehemiah next week, Bezrat Hashem. And the goal then is to, after Pesach, start a new class on Tefillah. But Tefillah be'iyun, like we're going to go into it, why we're saying what we're saying, not just translating words. So that you can just get yourself a Hebrew English Siddur. But to understand what the history is in the background and what it is we're asking for and how many times it seems that we're saying the same thing multiple times. I'll be sending out information right after Pesach, probably about that. But the good thing is there's never, ever, ever an end to what you can add to your repertoire of learning. Never. There's no such thing because there's always more to learn. So therefore, this chapter, which is telling us that you want to work on not just the ahava mesuteret, this innate, natural love we have for Hashem, which doesn't require any effort whatsoever, but you want to awaken the love of Hashem to a different level, which you have to actually put in some effort and maybe fight against the Yetzer Hara to, I don't want to do this right now. That's a totally different level. And it doesn't make a difference how much you add, but you're doing something. Let's read the last sentence. Or to awaken this natural love, but to use it to overcome your natural inclination that's in the left side of your heart. Even just your ahava mesuteret, when you engage it, is also called avodah. When you're going to battle against your natural instincts or your natural inclinations. You use at least at the bare minimum the natural love you have for Hashem in your heart in order to fight. As opposed to the person who has no battle, none whatsoever. That love that person has for Hashem, the Hava Mesuteret, that he doesn't even use the bare minimum love to overcome some Yetzer, that's not Avodah. That's not serving Hashem. You could be a Benoni, but he's a Benoni without serving Hashem in an active way. Tov. So I just want to see. I have a note here that I said to read this to you. You don't need to. Um. Okay, forget. I already mentioned it. Okay, so here's the deal. We have basically concluded this chapter, but I'm going to do next week, give a little summary, and also have our dear friend who we get the 5 minute summaries from. I'll play that, and then we'll give an introduction to Tet Zion, the next chapter. And I will tell you just as a teaser, when I was learning this chapter from the teacher I learned from, he introduced this chapter with the following sentence, which I wrote in my book. The essence of Chabad Hasidut is found in the first few lines of this chapter. This is the next one. How do I go about Tehid Tzaddik? How do I go about being Tehid Tzaddik? But we already said we're not going to be a Tzaddikim. Remember, we already talked about that. So the opening of this next chapter is another one of those critical introductions that will help us guide us through the next few chapters after that. Bezrat Hashem. Meantime, have a wonderful evening. Stay healthy. And see you, Bezrat Hashem. Oh, for those of you who come to Mesilat Yesharim, it's only online tomorrow at 9 a.m. And have a wonderful evening, everybody. Be well.